The beauty of empathy is that it's not just beneficial in one-on-one interactions, it extends into group dynamics, work environments, and even strangers you encounter. When you approach life with an empathetic mindset, you start seeing people's behavior as part of their own journey rather than something personal against you. This emotional awareness allows you to respond in ways that preserve your calm, protect your energy, and foster understanding, even in the most challenging situations. By practicing empathy, you embrace the idea that every person is carrying something, whether it's joy, grief, uncertainty, or hope, and you choose to approach them with patience, compassion, and respect. And in doing so, you create an emotional environment where calmness thrives, not only within you, but also around you. Empathy also teaches you patience. You begin to understand that everyone has their own pace of processing emotions, working through challenges, and dealing with life. This patience allows you to remain calm when people behave in ways that might normally irritate or frustrate you. Instead of rushing to judgment or trying to change them, you see them as individuals navigating their own journey, just as you are. This shift in perspective creates an internal calmness that can withstand the chaos around you. It's also important to note that empathy does not mean tolerating poor treatment or enduring behavior that is harmful to you. It simply means that even when you stand up for yourself or set boundaries, you do so from a place of understanding and respect rather than frustration or aggression. Empathy allows you to assert your needs calmly and confidently without feeling the need to engage in conflict or drama. Another crucial aspect of empathy and staying calm is that it fosters emotional resilience. When you are empathetic, you are less likely to take things personally because you recognize that people's behavior is shaped by a multitude of factors that are often beyond your control. When someone lashes out, instead of feeling wounded or retaliating, empathy lets you stay grounded, knowing that their actions are not a reflection of your worth, but rather of their own emotional state. It gives you the power to remain detached emotionally from their reactions, which in turn helps you respond in a way that is measured, thoughtful, and calm, rather than reactive. Empathy helps you in navigating difficult conversations. It enables you to listen deeply, to hear not just the words, but the emotions and intentions behind them. Even if the person is saying something hurtful, you can empathize with the fact that they are likely feeling pain, frustration, or fear. When you understand that their words are often an external manifestation of their internal battle, you can respond not with anger or defensiveness, but with patience, kindness, and understanding. Empathy in this context gives you the ability to de-escalate a potentially hostile situation by acknowledging the other person's feelings and validating their experience without necessarily agreeing with their behavior. When someone is angry or upset with you, the immediate instinct might be to defend yourself, retaliate, or even retreat. But empathy allows you to pause, take a step back, and think, why might they be reacting this way? It can help you see the bigger picture beyond the words or actions being thrown at you. Maybe they are overwhelmed by stress, feeling misunderstood, or struggling with something outside of the current situation. Rather than seeing their outburst as a direct attack, you begin to see it as a sign of their own internal struggle. And this awareness allows you to remain calm and composed because you understand that their emotional state is not necessarily about you, it's about them and what they are dealing with. Empathy is often regarded as the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. While this can make for deeper connections, empathy is also a tool for remaining calm in situations where others might be emotionally charged or reactive. When you approach others with empathy, you're not just feeling their emotions or sympathizing with their struggles, you're viewing the situation through their perspective. This shift in mindset can help you stay composed in moments when anger, frustration, or anxiety might otherwise provoke you into a reaction. By cultivating empathy, you learn that you don't have to agree with someone's behavior or actions to understand their emotional state. You don't have to take on their stress or anger, but you can acknowledge that it's real for them. Holding on to this perspective doesn't mean you accept poor treatment. You still set boundaries. You still speak up when necessary. But you do so from a place of strength and calm, not emotional reactivity. Because when you understand that someone else's behavior is a mirror of their inner reality, not a measure of your worth, you stop allowing their storms to shake your foundation. You stay rooted, you stay calm, and you stay free. This mindset is especially helpful when dealing with people who are consistently difficult or toxic. It gives you the emotional distance needed to interact with them without being consumed by the dynamic. You stop seeking validation from people who are incapable of offering it, and you stop letting their moods dictate your own. You may even come to a place of compassion, not condoning their behavior, but understanding that they are acting from a place of pain or limitation. On a deeper level, remembering that people's actions reflect them and not you reinforces your self-worth. It keeps you anchored in your own truth, even when someone else tries to distort it. It reminds you that you don't need to change yourself to meet their standards or diminish yourself to avoid conflict. You can stand tall in who you are, knowing that their inability to treat you with kindness or respect says far more about their character than it ever will about yours. When you internalize someone's negative treatment, you start carrying emotions that don't belong to you: shame, guilt, confusion, or resentment. But when you step back and remind yourself this is about them, you take back your power. You stop over-identifying with their emotions, see the situation with clarity instead of emotional distortion. And that clarity is what allows you to remain calm. You don't need to defend yourself, retaliate, or absorb their anger. You can witness it, acknowledge it, and still choose not to be pulled into it. It's incredibly easy to personalize people's bad behavior. If a colleague snaps at you, a friend withdraws, or a loved one speaks harshly, the immediate reaction is to wonder what you did wrong. You might overanalyze your words or question your actions, trying to make sense of their reaction. But oftentimes, the answer lies in them, not in you. Maybe they're under stress. Maybe they were raised in an environment where communication was combative. Maybe they're insecure and dealing with feelings of inadequacy. Or perhaps they simply lack the tools to express themselves in a healthy, respectful way. Whatever the case, their actions are rooted in their inner world, not in your value as a person. One of the most empowering truths you can carry with you, especially in emotionally charged situations, is the understanding that the way someone treats you is far more about who they are than it is about who you are. People project their internal world onto the external one, often unconsciously. Their tone, their attitude, and their behavior toward others is shaped by their own thoughts, beliefs, emotional baggage, and current state of mind. When someone is rude, dismissive, aggressive, or critical, it might sting, especially if you're someone who tries to maintain respect and kindness. But if you let their treatment define your worth, you surrender your self-esteem to someone who may not even be acting from a place of awareness or maturity. Ultimately, emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of emotional self-control. It allows you to hold peace in one hand and perspective in the other. It creates the mental and emotional space you need to stay calm, centered, and unaffected by the turbulence of others. It's a sign not of disconnection, but of emotional maturity, the kind that lets you show up fully without losing yourself in the process. In relationships, emotional detachment helps you maintain perspective. You stop expecting others to always validate you or respond the way you want. You accept that people are who they are, and that you can choose how much access they have to your inner world. You might love someone deeply and still choose not to be pulled into their drama. You might respect someone professionally and still not allow their criticism to derail your confidence. Detachment empowers you to filter out what matters from what doesn't, and to engage only with what aligns with your values and priorities. This kind of detachment is essential for staying calm, especially when dealing with difficult people. When you're too emotionally invested in how someone behaves or how they treat you, it becomes incredibly easy to get pulled into their emotional storm. You might take their words personally, feel responsible for their mood, or feel the need to fix, defend, or justify yourself constantly. Over time, this not only drains you, it creates patterns of reactivity that rob you of your clarity and composure. Emotional detachment allows you to step back, observe the situation objectively, and make thoughtful decisions instead of impulsive ones. It gives you room to ask yourself, is this really about me? Do I need to engage with this? Or can I let it pass without letting it disrupt my balance? Emotional detachment is often misunderstood as coldness, aloofness, or a lack of care. But in reality, true emotional detachment has nothing to do with indifference. It's not about shutting down your feelings or pretending you don't care about what's happening. Rather, it's about maintaining a healthy distance between yourself and the emotions, behaviors, or expectations of others, so that you're not overwhelmed or consumed by them. It means you can care deeply about someone or something and still protect your own peace. You can be compassionate without becoming entangled. You can be empathetic without absorbing someone else's pain as your own. Practicing intentional silence also helps you connect more deeply with yourself. In silence, you hear your own thoughts. You become more aware of your internal dialogue, your emotional state, and your true priorities. You begin to filter out noise that doesn't align with your values or goals. This self-awareness builds resilience because you're not constantly pulled by external forces, you're grounded in your own presence. And the more comfortable you become with silence, the less you fear being misunderstood or overlooked. You trust that your worth isn't defined by how often you speak, but by the substance and strength of your presence. In the end, silence is not the absence of power, it is power under control. It is the wisdom to know when to speak and when to hold back, when to engage and when to let go. It's a quiet force that protects your calm, preserves your focus, and asserts your boundaries in the most graceful way. In personal relationships, silence can communicate boundaries. It signals that you're not available for disrespect or emotional games. It says, without shouting, that you value peace over pointless engagement. And in professional settings, it can signal restraint, thoughtfulness, and confidence. When you speak less and listen more, your words carry more weight. People notice that you don't react impulsively. They pay more attention when you finally do speak, because your silence has already made a statement. Silence can also de-escalate tension in a way that words cannot. In moments of confrontation, silence can stop a conflict from spiraling. When someone is angry or trying to draw you into a fight, your silence can serve as a mirror, reflecting their behavior back at them. It creates discomfort not because you're being passive, but because you're not feeding the emotional fire. You're not validating the chaos, you're choosing peace over power struggles, wisdom over ego. And often, in that silence, the other person realizes there is no battle to be had, no fuel to burn. That's when the situation begins to calm down. When you choose silence instead of immediate reaction, you gain time to process. Time to understand not just what was said, but why it was said, and how you truly want to respond. This kind of silence isn't about avoidance or fear, it's about clarity. It's about knowing that you don't have to participate in every argument, answer every insult, or match every outburst. Not everything deserves your voice. Not every provocation requires your presence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing and walk away with your dignity intact. Silence is often misunderstood in today's loud, fast, and reactive world. People tend to associate silence with defeat, submission, or lack of opinion. We're taught to speak up, to assert ourselves, to respond quickly and confidently. And while communication is undoubtedly important, so is knowing when not to speak. Silence, when used with intention, is not weakness, it is strength. It is the pause that prevents unnecessary conflict, the space that allows emotions to settle, and the boundary that protects your energy from being consumed by noise that doesn't deserve your attention. This mindset transforms how you engage with people. You begin to realize that calm is not a passive state, it's a powerful stance. It allows you to walk away when necessary, to speak with clarity when emotions run high, and to preserve your well-being in the face of negativity. Over time, this decision-making process becomes second nature. Calm becomes less about managing moments and more about living from a place of intentional peace. Of course, this doesn't mean you never feel anger or frustration. Choosing calm doesn't mean denying your emotions, it means not being ruled by them. It means you acknowledge the emotion, you feel it fully, and you still choose how to respond. That moment of choice is where your power lies. And when you begin living from that space, calm no longer feels like a distant goal, it becomes a habit, a default, and ultimately a way of being. This kind of choice requires awareness and discipline. It means accepting that you don't need to match the energy of the person in front of you. You don't need to meet sarcasm with sarcasm or anger with anger. You can let the moment pass through you like a wave without losing your balance. And this doesn't come from suppressing your emotions, it comes from directing them with purpose. The choice to stay calm often involves letting go of the ego's urge to win, to be right, or to have the last word. It asks a different question: what's the most constructive thing I can do in this moment? More often than not, the answer is to remain calm. Choosing calm means you don't wait for external peace in order to feel internal peace. You create it. You choose to speak softly even when someone else raises their voice. You choose to pause before responding, even when you're provoked. You choose to breathe deeply, to hold your posture, to unclench your jaw, not because you feel calm, but because you want to remain in control of yourself. In many cases, the act of choosing calm precedes the feeling of it. Your body and mind follow the lead of your decision, not the other way around. One of the most liberating realizations on the path to emotional maturity is understanding that calm is not something you wait to feel, it's something you decide to be. Most people treat calmness as a fleeting state, something that arrives only when circumstances are ideal, when everyone is cooperative, when the day goes smoothly, and when there's nothing to worry about. But that kind of calm is conditional. It's fragile, easily shattered by the first sign of conflict or discomfort. The deeper truth is that calm isn't just a feeling that washes over you, it's a decision you make, especially in moments when it doesn't come naturally. This kind of power doesn't come from dominating others, it comes from mastering yourself. And when you do, you gain a quiet but undeniable influence. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect how you carry yourself. You become someone who can handle pressure, de-escalate conflict, and lead by example. In a world where so many are reactive, being calm is not just a way to survive difficult situations, it's a way to rise above them. Perhaps most importantly, staying calm builds trust. People feel safer around someone who doesn't get rattled easily. Whether in personal relationships or professional settings, calm individuals are often seen as reliable, balanced, and strong. Their presence offers a sense of stability, and others naturally gravitate toward them in times of uncertainty. Calmness isn't loud or showy, but it speaks volumes. It communicates self-respect, emotional intelligence, and confidence. It says, "I know who I am. I don't need to match your chaos to prove it." You ask better questions. You assess the other person's intent more accurately. You weigh your options and communicate more effectively. In this state, your decisions come from wisdom, not impulse, and the results are almost always more constructive. Calm also gives you control over your time and energy. Emotional reactivity is draining. Every argument you enter, every insult you internalize, and every moment you spend fuming or rehearsing comebacks robs you of mental focus and emotional bandwidth. But when you stay calm, you conserve that energy. You use it for things that truly matter, rather than scattering it across pointless power struggles or ego battles. It's a form of emotional discipline, and like all forms of discipline, it compounds over time into something powerful and deeply rewarding. When you remain calm in the face of tension or hostility, you shift the energy in the room. You create a pause in a world addicted to fast reactions. People notice, they pay attention. Your calmness becomes a silent influence that steadies not only your own presence, but often diffuses the emotions of others around you. In difficult conversations, your composed tone becomes the anchor. When others raise their voice, your steady one cuts through with clarity. This isn't about dominance or control, it's about setting the tone and protecting the quality of the interaction. Even when others don't change, you walk away with dignity and peace because you chose to act rather than react. In practical terms, calmness helps you think more clearly. When you're emotionally charged, your brain enters a reactive state where logic, empathy, and long-term thinking are diminished. But when you're calm, you can evaluate the situation from a rational perspective. Staying calm is often mistaken for weakness or passivity, but in reality, it is one of the greatest forms of power a person can possess. In a world where people often respond to stress with impulsive words, emotional outbursts, or aggressive posturing, the ability to remain composed is a rare and commanding strength. It means you are not easily manipulated by chaos, not swayed by provocations, and not controlled by the unpredictable behavior of others. Calmness puts you in the position of leadership not over others necessarily, but over yourself. And that kind of internal authority is what separates those who react from those who truly respond. Ultimately, letting go of the need to take everything to heart gives you the freedom to stay composed, confident, and emotionally detached in a healthy way. You stop trying to fix people or prove yourself to them. You listen without absorbing, observe without reacting, and engage without becoming entangled. And in doing so, you reclaim your energy, your focus, and your calm. Even in personal relationships, people often act out based on their own fears, frustrations, or emotional wounds that predate you. When you internalize their behavior, you make it your responsibility, and that's a burden that doesn't belong to you. Emotionally mature people understand that boundaries and perspective are necessary. When you stop taking things personally, you give yourself permission to let go of unnecessary suffering. You begin to realize that your worth isn't defined by someone else's opinion, nor should your mood be dictated by someone else's emotional turbulence. This mental boundary is essential for preserving your peace and preventing burnout in relationships, whether at work, in friendships, or with family. You start asking yourself not why are they doing this to me, but what might they be dealing with that's causing this behavior? That question changes everything. It doesn't mean you justify poor treatment or ignore inappropriate behavior, but it allows you to respond with clarity and grace instead of with pain or retaliation. A helpful way to practice not taking things personally is to recognize patterns. If someone behaves rudely with everyone, it's clearly not about you. If a stranger snaps at you in traffic, it's unlikely they even know who you are. If a person has a short temper, constantly interrupts, or makes sarcastic remarks, it might be their default coping mechanism, not a targeted attack on you. Once you begin to see that people's actions are often projections of their internal chaos, you start to free yourself from the emotional weight of their words and behaviors. Taking things personally turns you into a sponge, absorbing other people's negativity. It makes you reactive, sensitive, and vulnerable to every sharp word or dismissive look. But when you learn to step back and observe the situation from a more objective distance, you create a protective layer between yourself and the other person's emotional storm. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in life, especially when dealing with difficult people, is learning not to take things personally. While this is easier said than done, it's a vital step toward maintaining your inner calm. When someone speaks to you harshly, criticizes you unfairly, or treats you with disrespect, the natural tendency is to feel hurt, attacked, or defensive. It feels like a direct insult, a reflection of your worth or competence. But more often than not, people's behavior says far more about them than it does about you. Everyone carries their own burdens, insecurities, and emotional baggage. When someone lashes out, it's often not because of who you are or what you've done, but because of what they're going through: stress, frustration, fear, or unresolved issues from their own past. What's important to remember is that calm is not the absence of emotion. It's not a blank stare or a forced smile. It's a grounded state of being that allows you to feel everything: anger, frustration, disappointment, without letting those emotions dictate your behavior. Practicing calm doesn't mean becoming passive or numb. It means responding with clarity, wisdom, and inner control, no matter what the outside world throws at you. It's not easy. It's not instant. But with practice, it becomes part of who you are. Another aspect of practicing calm is learning to reframe the situation. Instead of thinking, "This person is attacking me," you might reframe it as, "This person is struggling to express themselves," or "This is not about me, it's about them." Reframing doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it helps you detach emotionally and see the situation with a wider lens. Over time, these mental shifts become more natural, and you find yourself less rattled by people who used to easily get under your skin. Consistency is key. The more you practice staying calm in small, everyday situations like someone cutting you off in traffic, a delayed reply to your message, or a minor disagreement, the more prepared you are for the bigger storms. You build emotional resilience in the quiet moments, not just the dramatic ones. And even when you slip, which is inevitable, you use it as a lesson, not a failure. Every challenging interaction becomes an opportunity to strengthen your calm muscle. Breathing is one of the simplest and most effective tools for practicing calm. A few slow, deep breaths can lower your heart rate, quiet your mind, and signal to your nervous system that you are not in immediate danger. It sounds small, even insignificant, but when done consistently, it becomes one of your most powerful tools for emotional regulation. Alongside breathing, grounding techniques such as feeling your feet on the floor, unclenching your hands, or focusing on your senses can anchor you in the present moment and prevent your thoughts from spiraling into anger or anxiety. Practicing calm doesn't mean avoiding conflict or pretending things don't bother you. It means being able to experience tension without being consumed by it. The first step in developing this skill is awareness of your body, your breath, and your emotional state. When something triggers you, your body usually knows before your mind catches up. Your heart rate may rise, your stomach may tighten, or your breathing may become shallow. Noticing these signs is your cue to pause. That pause, just a few seconds of silence, can create enough space to prevent a knee-jerk reaction. In that space, you give yourself a chance to choose how you want to respond instead of defaulting to an automatic habit. Calm is not something you're born with or without. It's not a personality trait reserved for monks, therapists, or those who simply don't get bothered. Calm is a practice skill, one that anyone can learn, refine, and strengthen with time and effort. In fact, some of the calmest people you'll ever meet are not that way because their lives are free of stress or confrontation, but because they've trained themselves to respond to challenges in a centered, deliberate way. Just like you build muscle through regular exercise, you build calm through repeated practice, especially in moments of discomfort. Mastering your response takes practice and intention, but each time you choose not to react impulsively, you are teaching your mind and body a new pattern, one of resilience, strength, and calm. Over time, this practice becomes natural. You stop expecting the world to behave the way you want it to, and instead become the steady force in any situation. You can't control others, but in learning to control yourself, you gain something far more powerful: peace. Choosing how to respond means not giving away your power. If someone insults you, you don't have to match their hostility. If someone is rude, you don't have to become defensive. That doesn't mean you suppress your feelings or pretend the behavior is acceptable. It means you act from your values, not your emotions. Responding rather than reacting is not a weakness. It's a sign of strength. It says, I am not controlled by this situation. I choose who I am. There's also a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your reaction is your own. You are no longer on a leash, emotionally speaking. Whether someone is yelling or criticizing, trying to provoke or guilt you, you get to decide how far they enter your internal world. When you adopt this mindset, staying calm becomes less about enduring difficult people and more about standing firm in your own emotional maturity. You don't have to match the chaos. You can be the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't escalate, and doesn't crumble. When we try to control others, even subtly, we waste valuable energy. We may raise our voice to get someone to listen, choose silence to make them feel guilty, or repeat ourselves hoping they'll finally understand. But these tactics rarely work. In fact, they often backfire, leading to more tension, resentment, and misunderstanding. The truth is, people change only when they choose to, not when we pressure them to. What we do have absolute power over is the space between their action and our reaction. That space is where our calm resides. That space is where we decide what kind of person we want to be in that moment. One of the hardest truths to accept, and one of the most liberating, is that we cannot control other people. We cannot control their tone, their mood, their words, or their behavior. People will say things that hurt, act in ways that confuse us, and sometimes project their own pain onto us. No matter how respectful, kind, or composed we are, we will inevitably encounter individuals who push our limits. This can be incredibly frustrating, especially if you pride yourself on being rational or emotionally intelligent. But understanding and embracing the reality that we have no power over others is a turning point. It shifts the entire focus away from trying to manage other people, and instead puts the spotlight on what we can manage ourselves. Self-awareness also creates space for empathy. When you're aware of your own inner world, it becomes easier to recognize that others have their own struggles and emotional triggers too. This awareness can soften your reaction, help you see beyond their behavior, and allow you to choose a calmer, more composed response. The person in front of you might be lashing out from stress, fear, or pain you know nothing about. With self-awareness, you stop feeding their fire and instead offer steady ground. In the end, self-awareness isn't just about managing conflict, it's about mastering yourself. It's not something that comes naturally to most of us, but it is something that can be learned and strengthened with practice. And the more you practice it, the more unshakable your calm becomes, regardless of who or what you're dealing with. When you are self-aware, you start to observe your emotions instead of being swept away by them. You begin to catch yourself in moments where you might otherwise lash out or withdraw. You notice that tightness in your chest, the quickening of your breath, or the clenching of your jaw. And instead of pushing through on autopilot, you stop and ask yourself, what's really going on here? Why am I reacting this way? That moment of reflection, however brief, is where calm begins. It's also about knowing your patterns. Maybe you tend to lose patience when you feel disrespected, or you become anxious when someone raises their voice. Recognizing those patterns gives you a head start. You no longer feel ambushed by your reactions. Instead, you anticipate them, manage them, and over time, transform them. It doesn't mean you stop feeling upset or frustrated. It means you learn to respond intentionally rather than emotionally. Self-awareness is the silent anchor that keeps us grounded when emotions rise and tensions build. It is the ability to recognize what you're feeling in real time and to understand where those emotions are coming from. When we're faced with difficult people or high-pressure situations, our natural instinct is often to react impulsively, sometimes with anger, sometimes with defensiveness, and other times by shutting down altogether. But these reactions don't arise in a vacuum. They come from deep within us, rooted in our past experiences, insecurities, and personal triggers. The key to staying calm lies in pausing long enough to notice these internal responses before they take control.